How's it going, guys? Welcome back to yet another episode of the I'm Currently In podcast. It has been a crazy year for all of us, including you guys. Hopefully, you have had time enough for visiting Cuba. And if you haven't, go and visit Cuba in 2024, which is going to blow your mind because Cuba is always changing. And hopefully, once you visit Cuba, you have the best experience ever. At the end of the video, I'm going to suggest you guys how you can do that. So if you want to check it out, stay tuned. Okay, so today I have a list here. Here are top 10 things that Cuban people do during the festive season. Number one is the parrandas. If you don't know anything about or anything related to what the parrandas are, basically I would say the parrandas is like they are like festivals, stuff like that. Like for example, each city in Cuba have different parranda. Basically, besides call it parranda, I would say the Cuban people are very festive or, festival human beings basically because we're always thinking about parties and what can we do and where not. Okay. So number two, and this one is so funny, is roasting a pig. In Spanish, we call this like doing lechon asado. Lechon is the pig. And every year, the Cuban, we basically we eat pig. That's like the main, I would say, dish that we tried. Basically, it's like white rice with black beans, pig, yuca, and salad. That's what we get. Okay. But in the description that I put here, it says Christmas Eve is marked by a grand feast. If you have visited Cuba before, you know what I'm talking about. A non-Cuban celebration is complete without a succulent roast pig. That is true. And actually, every year we try to get the pig, even if it's complicated, because the food in Cuba has been like a little bit more complicated every single year to get. But we try to eat pig. That's what most people look for. Families gather to enjoy the crispy skin and tender meat at the lechon asado and holiday and in holidays a delicacy. This is like a legacy, Cuban legacy. Like every year, Cubans, no matter where they come from, whether it's the countryside or the city or whatever, they all of them, all of us, including me, we look for this New Year's Eve food. And actually, when people ask me, "What do you think about the Cuban food?" or "What's your favorite Cuban food?" I will highly recommend you guys to try that. In my opinion, it's the best because of the variety. Like, is going to be very Cuban, living that experience. Not only like eating, but the experience of like I don't want to see the word kill, but if you kill the pig and you roast it and you put all the sazon that you have to, and you mix it and the vibe, and you're drinking rum and you share with your friends, with your family, all that Cuban tradition is make you feel like you're in Cuba, and it's something that you have to live. Yes or yes, if you come to Cuban Christmas and you want to be involved with the community. Number three is midnight mass or Misa de Gallo. This is something that Cubans attend midnight mass, known as Misa de Gallo, where they come together to celebrate the birth of Jesus. The air is filled with traditional carols and church bells ring out to announce the arrival of Christmas. Number four is dancing to son and salsa. This is very basic. Like if you come to Cuba, you must know at least how to dance salsa or son. But if you don't, and you come here in Christmas, you're gonna hear or listen music everywhere, and people are gonna be dancing everywhere. That's pretty basic in Cuba. Actually, Cuban people always say that it's one of the most I don't know how to describe it, but Cuba as a country is very, it's a festival. You know what I mean? It's always thinking about how to be happy, although all the problems that you can see in Cuba, all the contrast. Think about Cuba and think about music, think about festivals, think about party. And when you think about Cuban people, party is involved. That's why in Christmas Eve, salsa song, reggaeton even is going to be involved. Music is an integral part of Cuban culture, and Christmas is not an exception. Cubans celebrate with live music and dance to the beats of son and salsa music, creating a festive atmosphere that lasts throughout the holiday season. Number five is El Aguinaldo. Children go from house to house singing traditional Christmas carols known as aguinaldos in exchange for a small gift or treats, and is a heartwarming tradition that adds a touch of innocence to the holiday spirit. When I was a kid, we used to do this a lot, but not asking for gifts or anything. We used to go knocking doors like, hey, do you want to go outside? And we used to do like crazy things like we're going to be talking about that later, but basically like carrying a bag and doing like in Spanish we call this dar la vuelta a la manzana, but it's basically like going around the same block, wishing that someday you could travel outside of the country. But nowadays it's even more like international stuff, but the Cuban one used to be like that. Number seven, no, number six is decorating with tropical flair. While snow-covered landscapes are distant dream in Cuba, the festive spirit is brought to life with colorful decorations. Palm fronds, tropical flowers, and vibrant lights transforms homes and street into a festive paradise. I have to tell you guys that this is not going to be seen everywhere, but depending on where you stay or where you visit, it might be something that you could see. For example, in the neighborhood where I'm currently living, and actually, if you have no idea, I just moved. I'm only 5 minutes from the airport. It's even easier to see stuff like this. If you go to Havana Central, Central Havana, or the old town, depending on the streets where you go, you might see this stuff. But if you go to some neighborhoods out there, like very contrasted places, you're not going to see this. Okay. So it's not going to be like, hey, let's go to Cuba and you're going to see that. No, no, no. It's not going to be that easy, but it's something that you could find depending on where you go. Right. So the other one, I think, is the number seven, is lighting fireworks or fuegos artificiales. This one, I would say that is even, it's not common. It's not common, but it's something that I put here because when I was a kid, I used to this. I used to see this a lot, and actually, my mom. I remember my mom at the door of the house where we used to live. She said, "Hey, Alex, look at the fuegos artificiales," and it was beautiful because I was a kid living in Cuba and stuff like this. For me, it was like pretty much weird, and it was like very unique. Nowadays, it's even more complicated. So if you want to see this, you got to go to El Morro Cabaña, which is the fortress, and they do some stuff like that, which is beautiful, but it's not like very common stuff. But it's something that you can see, and actually, it's just something that you'd have to visit just to see that. And you can see that in your country. But in Cuba, it's very like unique because it's not that common. So once you see that, you're going to be like, wow, you know, that's something that for Cubans is mind blowing. Number eight is exchanging gift of Three Kings Day. In Cuba, for example, the gift giving tradition extends beyond Christmas Day to Three Kings Day, Dia de los Reyes Magos. On January 6th, family exchange a gift to commemorate the arrival of the three wise men. This is something that most people do. And actually, not only for the kids, but the family itself. People celebrate this, and actually, I think it's a holiday day. So it's holiday. If you come to Cuba on these days, this is something that you might take into account if you want to bring a present for some kids because they're gonna appreciate it. In Cuba, these days very important for the kids, and families take this into account when it comes to celebrating Christmas in Cuba. People are looking for all the time toys and things to give to the children. So if you're coming that day, think about that. Number nine, visiting loved ones in cemeteries. And going to the cemetery is something that we all do every single year, not only yearly, but I would say monthly sometimes, depending on who is in the cemetery. Perhaps it's your mom or every any close family member. For example, my grandfather, he used to go every single year, and my stepfather, he goes every single year to see her mama, and that's something very Cuban, very traditional. That every year you go there and you put some flowers because you want to remember how happy your family was during that time. And actually, Christmas in Cuba during the 1969 it was prohibited. But now that we're able to celebrate that, people take that into account. Like, let's do something together. Let's do a great party. And actually, this year I'm going to a friend of my house to celebrate that. Even though it's my friend and it's not my family, it's almost like a brother. And the reason is because we want to make that happen. To keep that vibe, no matter who you are. Because sometimes we spend a year with the family, and the next year we're going to be able to spend that with a friend, and you never know who's going to leave the country next. So you want to get that connection and be next to the people you love as soon as possible, because you never know. So the number 10 is enjoying traditional sweets. Christmas in Cuba is incomplete without indulging in traditional sweets like turrones. In English, I think is nougat, or I don't know. You let me know in the comments below, guys. How do you say that? And mantecados, which is shortbread cookies. These delectable treats are shared among family and friends, adding a sweet touch and festivities. Los turrones are basically like peanut, but you go to the shop and you buy the classic ones. But in Cuba, there are some people who have no money to buy the turrones, so they buy peanut turrones, or I don't know how to say that. Guys, if you want to visit Cuba in Christmas, I have to tell you in advance that this is one of, I would say, one of the best decisions that you're going to make. It's going to be completely different. Whether it's because you want to see the contrast of Cuba, you're going to have it. Just because you want to go to places like Vinales, for example, and you want to see like these cigars sleeve like growing, you're going to have them. The weather is going to be not that hot. So it could be like 20 degrees sometimes, or even 24, which for Cuba, that's going to be pretty good. So you're going to have a good weather, so you can go to the beach. And then you have the Christmas activities, which, in my opinion, are going to be very life changing experiences, because it's not going to be anything related to, or anything similar to whatever is that you have in the country that you're watching this from. It's going to be pretty much like a very low dimension, but when it comes to impression or feeling, it's going to be even bigger because of the way that we do celebrate things in Cuba. People, when they visit Cuba, I don't know why, but they think their way, they change the way they think about life in Cuba. Um, no matter where you're coming from, visit Cuba, see it by yourself, and you're gonna, believe me, you're gonna change the way that you see everything. And I'm talking like this because I don't know if you can see here, but it's 12 a.m. And this is the time that I'm shooting this video for you guys, because I have been super busy today, but I had to. And I didn't want to say goodbye until the next year without talking to you guys. So that being said, it was a pleasure having you here. If you want to visit Cuba next year, go to alexr.emprende.com. We can help you guys, providing you the best services, accommodations, activities here in Cuba, all from the comfort, so you can have whatever you want. And at the same time, you still have that contrast that so many of you are looking for when you visit a country like Cuba. So it was a pleasure having you here, seeing all your smiling faces. My name is Alex Rodriguez, just in case you're new here. Thank you so much for watching and listening to the podcast, and welcome to Havana, Cuba. Ciao, pesca, la vuelta picadillo, and see you guys in the next episode. Ciao.